Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and my video tutorial on how to build a rocket to get to the moon, do a moon landing, and then fly back home safely. So when we last left off, we had just finished building our rocket, but I was about to show one of the issues that can happen with these rockets is this one would probably be fine as is, but when you get bigger rockets especially, the weight and just size can make things a little bit unstable. So like these will probably stay pretty well fixed, but if they were huge with that single connection, you know, you get out on the launch pad and they would like bend and bow and do squirrely things. So one way to correct for that, and I'll go ahead and just do it here even though it's probably not necessary, is in structural there's these strut connectors, and what I can do is, and I'll just put like one across there. And then sometimes the top can get a little wobbly, so I'll do from like there to there. And all these do is they just build a little bit of extra structure to keep things more stable and more solid. And even though I have decouplers that all these things are going to separate at different times, these will decouple at the same time, so they're not going to cause you any problems there. So, and then the other thing I didn't do before the end of the last video was name our craft. So I'm going to call it Moon, or Moon 1. And we are ready to go. So I will hit launch. And once we get out here, you'll see I have a bunch of information with my Kerbal engineer. Okay, there we go. Took a second to get out here, but I have all kinds of information and displays and things that aren't part of the base game. So this is again Kerbal Engineer Redo. I'm going to turn off. Nope, I want to keep that one on. Heat, that's what I turn off. So these are all configurable, and it's pretty nice, and it's got a lot of stuff that a lot of it's probably not the most useful information. I mean, like this one tells me some stuff about my craft that a lot of which I don't really ever pay attention to. Like it's got suicide burn. To be honest, I don't know what that is. Intake air usage, which could be useful for an airplane, but this one doesn't intake air. Tells you how many parts you got, things like that. But the main thing that I'm looking for here is my delta V per stage, really my total delta V, which right now is only showing 4,000. We were in vehicle construction at 7,000. This changes based on your situation. So if I were to burn, like somehow fly sideways and stay in this level of atmosphere, that's all the more delta V I'd get because I have wind resistance and other problems. This increases once you get up into vacuum. So it's just telling you a story of where you're at now. And then my thrust to weight ratio, I have a max of 2.83. I have 0 right now because I haven't fired anything off, but good information to have. And then these tell me like my terrain altitude, which is useful because this is sea level altitude or equivalent. And so sometimes you're not sure how far off the ground you are. This will tell you that. Tell you your vertical speed versus your horizontal speed, where this is your total speed of both. And a few other useful things. The main thing is, so normally when you'd launch or do any maneuvering, you'd have to go out the map mode, and you have to see like your trajectory, and there'd be the apoapsis, or if you're in a full orbit, the periapsis, and you'd have to kind of like hover over the little indicator for that to figure out how high it was getting or how low it was getting. This just tells you. So you can actually do more without having to flip back and forth from map mode all the time, so it's kind of handy. So anyway, we'll get our launch going. I'm going to hit T to get our stabilization assist going, because I have a pilot here and he's going to provide me that. Now initially you only have a few options because I'm still on the ground. As soon as I get off the ground, a lot of these will pop up, but once you start going forward, you'll have your prograde, which is the direction you're heading. It's not the direction you're pointed, but the direction you're actually moving, and that changes whether you're on the surface or orbit, or not on the surface, but whether you've selected surface or orbit, because of course the surface is moving to the east at 174.6 meters per second already. So this just gives you relative. When you're in lower atmosphere, surface helps because the air is also moving that way, and you don't want to tilt too far. But once you get higher up, orbit's more important for you. So general stability assist is just going to try to keep the ship pointed in the same direction, and then we'll use some of the other ones later. So I'm at half throttle. I'm actually going to leave it there because I have so much thrust to weight. I don't want to go too fast. And we'll go ahead and hit space to get us started. You can see kind of a slow takeoff, but I'm cool with that. And then what we want to try to do is a gravity turn. What a gravity turn is you just turn a little bit to point the craft so it's not straight up, and then gravity will slowly just kind of pull it over on its own as you gain altitude. So once I get to about 1,000 meters, I'm going to just tilt slightly to the right. And I don't want my pointer to go outside my prograde too much, because then it'll be at too steep an angle and I can start running into wind resistance problems. I can flip my rocket. But once I've got that prograde to move just a little bit, I will switch to prograde. So now as gravity kind of changes the direction, because I'm actually not flying exactly this direction, I'm going a little bit off, it'll slowly tilt with me and eventually get to the point where I'm at the right altitude. I'll be horizontal. So if you see my fuel here, I've already ejected the first tanks, but it shows some of the tanks burning faster than the others. And then when I separate, this is showing the total fuel available for that engine, which includes the other engine that's burning faster, or the other tank that's burning faster. When I separate here in a second, these will all of a sudden go to full again because of the remaining tanks that they can feed off of. They'll be full. And I want to, okay, I'm above 10,000 now. I'm doing good speed. I don't want to go too fast. So here they're showing empty. Hit space to separate, and now they're showing full again. So I'm going to throttle up just a little bit. I want to hit this 90 degree, or excuse me, this 45 degree tilt when I'm at about 20,000. That's just kind of a good indicator and a good gravity turn. I'm going to assist it a little bit by hitting right as we get closer. But I can see my apoapsis here. I know I need to get that to at least 70 kilometers to be in space, or to be out of the atmosphere. So I want to keep an eye on that versus where I'm at. I'm going to turn this off for a second just to give myself a little bit more tilt, but not too much. And usually what I'll try to do is once this starts getting close to 50, I'll try to, and this is close to 30, which I'm about at now, I'll actually go a little bit further than the prograde, and you can switch it to orbital at this point. It'll do it automatically, I think, when you get to 40, but start going horizontal, and I'm going to up my speed here a little bit, or up my thrust. And what you can see what's happening here is instead of having a tall peak, it's stretching my orbit out, which is exactly what I want. Because I want to have this get me pretty close to a full orbit by the time I have to maneuver again in space. Throttle up here, full throttle. So this is climbing slowly, but that's okay. Because again, it's pushing my apoapsis further out. You can see that line is moving at a pretty good clip, and that's what I want. I want to shallow out my trajectory. And there's my booster parts going back. There's the moon. You'll notice a few things. Like I don't see stars yet, which you wouldn't in the game anyway, because you're not in space. But even once I get into space, I still don't see stars. Because I have a mod that changes how light works a little bit. I will if I look straight up, but with the planet view, I won't. Alright, so I'm above 70. I'm going to cut my engine here. And you can see I got almost an orbit going. So I want to click on my apoapsis now and pull up my maneuver node. And when I hit add maneuver, this is another mod I have which helps fine-tune your maneuvers a little bit. I'm not going to talk about it right now just because I'm running out of time here. But I'll make my maneuver, and I want this to put me pretty close to a perfect circle. You can tell you're getting there when your apoapsis and periapsis, which I don't have one yet. Try to flip. There they go. This does me pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and use this to fine tune just a little bit. Close enough. Alright, so now I'm just waiting to get there. Now, if I hit this, will point me towards my maneuver. And this has an extra feature I added in the settings where it tells me when I need to start my burn and exactly how long I need to go. These numbers here aren't always quite right, especially because the time estimated burn is only based on your current engine. I'm about to separate, which means I'm going to go to a less powerful engine. Well, this doesn't calculate that. This calculates with your current engine, you would need to burn 22 seconds. Well, this one takes into account that I'm not going to have that engine for very long. I'm going to flip to the other one. So it's just much more accurate. And then I'm going to hit Z to put me in immediately at full throttle once this gets to 0. And then X to cut it when my burn's done. So a couple seconds and go. Separate. And again, this is the fuel tank that's supposed to get me to the moon and back, or not back, but get me to the moon and into orbit around the moon. So I kind of hate to burn it away, but there's plenty of fuel in there and I'll be fine. So it's kind of taken over a little bit from what the previous stage should have gotten me. And again, because I have the stability assisted maneuver, it's keeping me right on the maneuver direction I need to be. About 8 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. And then again, I can tell from here without having to go to map mode that my apoapsis is at 73 kilometers, my periapsis is at 72. I'm in orbit, so I'm in good shape. I can click my checkbox here to remove the maneuver node, and now I'm in orbit. And again, I can't see stars, but I can see planets and hover over them, and it'll even tell me which ones there are. Usually you can't see those all. If I look straight out, the stars show up again. It's basically the idea that if you're looking at a highly reflective surface, the light coming off of it will kind of drown out the light from the other stars. So, but not the planets, because they're also super bright. So, the next thing we need to do is, well, one, I'm going to hit 1 to get my solar panels out. You can see them deploying there. And I didn't use a whole lot of energy on that flight. The engine's burning, actually. Some of the engines will charge your engine. So now it filled me up. I'm good to go. I won't be able to when I'm on the dark side, but that's fine. I won't be there long enough. So I'm going to go back to map mode. I'm going to zoom out, and there's the moon. That's where I want to go. So the way you want to do it, and you got to kind of tweak it a little bit, but you want to start your burn. The way I do it is, here's the, you can see I zoomed out and I'm looking straight down at the north part of the planet of Kerbin. Is you want to start your burn here. So if I start a burn right there, and I hit add maneuver, while I'm burning in the direction I'm pulling this, it's actually changing my orbit like 90 degrees from the way I'm burning. So it's making this part of the orbit bigger. Now, if I try to, if I zoom in a little bit, sometimes these maneuver nodes are hard to mess with, which is why having a mod makes it a little bit easier. If I were to try to burn and move this straight towards the moon, I never get captured by the moon. So it's like, hey, I should be getting some indication that the moon's getting me here. Well, the problem is, by the time I'm here, the moon's going to be over here, because the moon is orbiting Kerbin as well. So I need to try to get a trajectory that's going to basically have the moon and my craft kind of meet at the same point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. I'll zoom out a little bit. Oh, and that was pretty lucky. I got it, so you can see there's this little purple thing here, and this kind of goes like a little bit lighter color. This says, hey, you're about to come in contact or come in the influence of another object, and it's going to mess up your orbit a little bit. But I can't really see what it's doing. I can't see how far away I am. I can't see what side I'm coming from. It's kind of hard to see what's going on there. So there's a couple things you can do. One, if you click on your object you're trying to go after, you get a couple options. One is set as target, one's focus view. If I do set as target, it gives me some additional information that I'm not really going to use so much for this one, but just be aware that that's there. The main thing is if your orbit, like if you look at this crazy purple line, that's Minmus. It's got a really kind of, tilted orbit, and you want to try to match that before you intercept. So it gives you these ascending nodes and descending nodes to do that. I'm only off by, 0.2 degrees of the moon, so I'm fine. I'm not going to bother with that. But the other thing you can do is click and do focus view, and now it puts me towards the moon. Now, I'm just barely in the influence, so I just have this weird little kind of anomaly over here. And if I flip back to my maneuver node, it's kind of hard to click on that because there's just a whole lot going on over there. It can be done, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to use my precise node, which I'll talk about a little bit now. This precise node gives you just some fine-tuning controls, but you can adjust what it's doing without having to click and drag on the other thing. So I can change my prograde, I can change my normal and radial, I can change the position of the node around the orbit I'm on, and then I can also tell it to snap to the apoapsis, the periapsis, the descending node, the ascending node, and I think this just adjusts it by a certain amount. So I'm going to try, Okay, I hit just a little bit of juice, and you can see that this particular trajectory is going to take me right through the middle. I'm going to smack into the moon. I don't want that. I want to get into kind of a low flyby that I can turn into a low orbit. So I'm going to try moving the position. Oh, and now it disappeared. Okay. Now, again, this also tells me what my moon periapsis is. I can hover over it and see, but this just gives you the information, so it's less things to try to go hunt and peck. At 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers, I'm low enough that I'm at risk of smacking into like the edge of a crater or a mountain or some other terrain feature here. I just know from experience that you want to not be too much lower than about 7,000 meters. So what I usually aim for is about 10,000. So, but I'm going to try, and maybe I just need to, you can also change the amount it changes by. You can type it in here too, but we'll try doing this. So, oh, that messed me up. Okay, so if I do that, and you can tell that it's going to have me burn when the moon is approximately, what would you say, about, it's not 90 degrees, but maybe about 60 degrees, because it's more than 45 from Kerbin. So if I burn here at that maneuver node, it's going to put me on a flyby of the moon at a minimum altitude of 10,000 meters or 10 kilometers. Now if I go back, if I hit backspace to focus on my ship, you can see here that what's going to happen from the perspective of Kerbin is I'm going to fly out, I'm going to get under influence of the moon, and it's basically going to slingshot me out into deep space, which would be a bad thing if I couldn't correct for this. Now you can do what they did with the real moon missions, is try to do a free return trajectory where you go out, you actually try to get captured. I'm flying on the right hand side of the moon here. You can try to get it to where you go to the left hand side, which then the gravity will pull you around and put you in a figure 8 pattern and get it to where it'll essentially, if you like ran out of fuel or didn't have enough fuel to maneuver or something happened, you know, you had a Apollo 13 situation, it would actually take you back to Kerbin and into the atmosphere without you having to do anything. That's kind of tricky to do. It's kind of a fun challenge, but it's not necessary. We got plenty of fuel, so we're just going to stick with this. And so I'm going to go back to my regular view. And you can see I have a city lights mod that just adds some lights to the surface when you're in the dark. They're just kind of glowing dots when you get down to the surface, but kind of makes it look pretty from up here. So I have 16 minutes to get to my maneuver, so I'm going to use warp to get there faster. We'll go a little bit faster. Hope it's not going to let me go any faster because I'm at too low an altitude. So 3 minutes, 2 minutes, slow down just a little bit. Oh, maybe not that much. Okay, 30 seconds. So I'm going to hit my stability assist to point me towards my maneuver. Usually I want to do this a little bit early because as you can see here it overshoots and then corrects itself. And when you're in a really huge ship, that can take a long time. Alright, so we got 15 seconds to go, and I got to burn for 1:30. Again, I don't care that I got to burn that long because I'm super fuel efficient. This is still better than a more powerful engine, so I'll hit Z to go to max here in just a second. 3, 2, 1, go. And then I'll hit X. You don't necessarily have to go max thrust and then cut off. You can do some, adjust your throttle up and down a little bit to try to get more precise. But what I usually do is do this initially, and then I'll do my fine tuning after. That and all your estimates are based on full throttle. So this is going to be kind of a long burn. It's a little bit over a minute left. But if I go back here, I can see here's my orbit growing. And it starts off growing slow, but the big thing with this game is little changes here only make little changes also nearby, but make big changes further out. So this will actually, the amount this is changing will start to accelerate as it gets further out, which makes it a little bit harder to control, but again, that's why we're using the timers here to make it a little bit better. And we're flying over the desert. You can see some clouds from, again, one of my other mods. There's Jewel out in the distance. Alright, 20 seconds. 10 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, done. And I'll go ahead. We don't need the maneuver node anymore, so I'll click that off. And then what I'm going to do, and hey, look, there's the moon coming over the horizon. Kind of looks like the Death Star. So I'm going to go to map mode. I'm going to click on the moon, focus view, and zoom in to see how close I got to where I was trying to do. So I got pretty darn close, but I'm a little bit higher altitude than I want to be when I get there. Now I could just wait till I get there, go into orbit, and then adjust my orbit. But again, it's going to actually take more energy once I'm there, because the closer you are to the area you're trying to manipulate, that's probably a better way to say that, the more energy it takes. At this far away, it would only take a couple quick puffs of thrust to move this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in prograde, because I know I got to burn more to get it closer. And then to do just really quick adjustments, what I'll do is I'll hold control, which is what lowers your throttle, and I'm going to tap shift, so that'll just give me a couple quick puffs of thrust. And you can see it's lowering my orbit with every tap, and I'm barely using any fuel. And I'm just going to move this to get closer. Alright, so I'm at almost 11. That's close enough to me. It's kind of flashing because it must be at kind of like a weird point. I'm not sure why. That'll clean itself up later. I'll hit backspace to look at my ship, and there we are. We are on our way to the moon. So, with some weird flashing going on. It probably just thinks it's trying to think I'm doing two things at the same time. One is just to complete my orbit, and the other one is like, oh yeah, you're getting close enough to the moon for the capture. But just a weird glitchy thing, but it'll work out. So that's enough for video number 2. When we get to video number 3, we'll actually get to the moon, we'll get in orbit and do our landing, and then should have enough time to actually do the trip back and land on Kerbin. We'll see you then.